for it, yeah. We're here for it, yeah. We're here for it, yeah. We're here for it, yeah.
Hey Baily, it's so great to have you here today. How are you?
Oh my goodness, I am so excited to be doing this. I'm doing really good. Thank you, Paula.
That is good to hear. That is good to hear. Well, before we jump straight into the interview and get to know you a bit more, could you please introduce yourself to the listeners and watchers?
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Baily Hager, and I'm a Nashville-based singer, songwriter, artist, and producer. So I get to have a hand in all the things.
All the hats, exactly.
Yeah.
And
Exactly.
what are three adjectives that you would use to describe yourself? Like 3 words that you would say people around you know you as, and that they are good words of explaining who you are.
Yeah, I would definitely say vulnerable, like in my everyday life and in my music. I would say messenger of hope. That's, like I am just that way no matter what. Hope is very important to me. And a third one, joyful. I've heard that my friends have, encouraged me with that a lot. So I would say those 3 things.
I love the balance of vulnerable and joyful as well, because I think when you're vulnerable, you do think very, very sorrowful. And I love that your music is very vulnerable, but it is very, very joyful as well. So that, I was going to say juxtaposition, but that's not a normal word in a normal sentence. But
absolutely.
That balance is so beautiful.
Yeah.
And we will dive into the music very, very soon. But your bio describes you as a pioneering artist and producer. But let's take it back to the early days. So what is it that sparked that initial interest in music and production for you?
Yeah. What's funny is I was 9 years old when I wrote my first song. I started singing in church at 7 years old, primarily because my mom made me, because she found out that I could sing. And I had no clue what I was doing. I was 7 years old. But I made up my own song when I was 9, but like verse, chorus, second verse, bridge, like whole thing. But also I just, was doing it for fun. But my mom heard me, and then next thing, I was singing it for my church Christmas program because it was a Christmas song. And but when like the passion for it ignited in me, this is really funny, and I don't know if anybody's going to know this movie or not, but when I was 12, I watched a movie called August Rush. And it's about a little kid who gets separated from his parents, but he uses music to find his way back to them. And he like hits the guitar, plays the guitar, like, and he's like this musical genius. And so I watched that movie when I was 12, and it like awakened something in me. And so I went in my room immediately after watching that movie, and I wrote 2 more songs. And like I never stopped writing after that. I was writing pretty much every day. And when I was 17, I got my first MacBook Pro for my birthday, and it came with GarageBand. So I started making YouTube covers in GarageBand, uploading them to YouTube and things like that. And I just never stopped. I became obsessed with being able to make music on my laptop. So that's kind of how everything started for me.
Okay, so you're now 12, 13 with a MacBook Pro, realizing that you can do production, you're enjoying songwriting and singing.
Yeah.
What were some of the other steps along that journey at a young age, realizing that this is actually where I'm being called to go?
I definitely think it had a large part to do with the people along my life that saw the gift in my life or on my life and just were so encouraging to me. Like people were giving me like instruments or equipment or lessons or wanting to hear my songs, helping me like record them. Like I think that's kind of what made me realize that I loved it, was the other people around me investing into my life. And when I think about it now, like all the people that invested in me, like I'm so, so grateful, because you can't do this thing alone. It takes a village. It takes a community. It takes people being in your corner to believe in you, because without it, you want to give up, every other day. So I definitely think that is a huge part of it. Looking back at from when I was a kid in school, my choir teachers, my band directors, like, just people who gave me a chance to share my gifts. And so that's a big part of it for sure.
I love that. And being so young, I can imagine that that was like your thing that you hyper focused on. It was like, okay, I can see the people around me are telling me I'm good and are like encouraging me, blessing me with words, but physically as well.
Yeah.
When you are a kid, you kind of fixate on the one thing that you're going to be when you grow up. But I
Yeah.
love that, like that one thing aligned with like God's plans and
Yeah.
just kept being the thing, you know?
Yes. Yes.
And that is a real blessing, because I think a lot of people that are artists, you know, it's very much like they feel like it's them against the world, but it sounded like you actually had that community around you, and that played a big part of your story.
Yes.
And you actually continue on, you know, over the years, producing writing for yourself and for other people. And fun fact for the audience, I mean, Baily will know this, it literally is about her, but fun fact for the audience, you are the first female producer signed to Capital CMG label, which, for anybody who doesn't know, is one of the largest Christian labels in the world, like, hello, worldwide.
Yes.
We need the story of how that happened, what was the journey there, and yeah, what that means for you.
Yeah, it's so wild, and everything happened so fast. Well, you know, it's been a journey, obviously, but the Capital thing that happened so quickly. And, you know, from 19 to 28, I worked for a real estate call center, and worked remotely, and I did not like it at all. You know, just imagine a creative person sitting at a desk for a call center, you know, for 6 to 8 hours a day. Not my thing, but it allowed me to still write songs and, you know, lead worship and things at my church. And so, but when I was 28, I finally got to go part-time staff at the church that I was at the time, after, you know, 4.5 years of being there. And I was going to start a school of ministry and teach the Bible, because that's something that I'm also really passionate about. And not even 3 weeks after that, I got publishing offers for, you know, to be a songwriter for Bethel Music and for Capital CMG. And so then I had to like choose, but which was crazy. And I was just like, what is going on? Like, this is awesome. I'll do ministry and I'll do music. That's the dream. And so I ended up signing with Capital, and a large part of that was because they wanted to sign me as a producer writer, because they, first of all, producer writers who, you know, are producing the track and helping write the song at the same time, there's not a lot of them. And they were very passionate about having a diverse roster, and been praying for a female producer, which they have never had in the history of Capital CMG. And that's kind of scared me a little bit, because I didn't feel good enough. I didn't feel fast enough. You know, a lot of producer writers that I've worked with in writing rooms, they're so fast, and the demo sounds incredible by the end of the songwriting session. And so I just was like really praying about it, and I felt like it took more faith on my part to sign with Capital, and it was going to challenge me. And I realized, you know, if I'm going to be the first one and I want to help pave a way for female producers in this space, like, this is how I would do that. And so even though it was a little scary and very challenging, I took the leap and, you know, and signed with Capital. I ended up leaving my deal last September, but for like 2.5 years, I was writing with some of my heroes and, you know, getting to produce. And it made me such a better producer, because I kind of got thrown into the deep end, and like I was forced to grow and just working so hard. And so, but it happened because, and the reason I was connected with Bethel Music is Bethel Music had put on a songwriting camp that you had to like audition for or send an application, where they were going to take in 50 songwriters and artists and just pour into them for a few days. So they put on this camp, and I applied for it because it was going to be hosted in Nashville, Tennessee. So I was like, I might as well, I live here. So I applied and I got in, and that they, you know, they just poured into us. They brought in all these industry people to meet with us and write with us and share about the industry. And I met this amazing girl, just so cool. Her name is Lindsay O'Halloran. And at the time, she was on the creative publishing team at Capital CMG. And she was there, and they did like this live songwriting feedback thing for some of the songwriters who sent in songs. Like, we all listened to their song, and they had different publishers from different labels give live feedback. And whenever she would give feedback, I agreed with her 100%. And so I was just like, I want to meet her. Like, she seems so cool. She was one of the only females on the panel and the youngest one on the panel. So I just went up to her after and introduced myself, and I didn't know anything about publishing at the time. So I just asked her if she wrote music and told her I was like, I would love to write with you sometime. Like, had no clue that, her job was to sign songwriters. And so we just connected and had coffee. And when she found out I produced, she like freaked out, and it kind of just started from there. And I think it was about 6 or 7 months later that I ended up getting an offer from them and signed. And so that's kind of how it happened. Really wild. So within, about a year, I think it was 1 year from meeting Lindsay and the Bethel team to like October to October, and then I signed.
Wow.
Yeah.
Amazing. I love that you said it was quick, because it in the music industry that actually is quick, but really
Yes,
in real
it
life
is.
you must have been like, I can see the finish line, or at least one of the pit stops. I can see what's my next goal, but it still feels far away until you actually do it.
Yes.
And I was going to touch on the point you said about being like, oh, I don't know if I'm good enough when they asked you to come on.
Yeah.
That is something that like a lot of women do feel, especially women producers or women like in the behind the scenes in scenes that are predominantly male dominated.
Yeah.
How did you kind of come out of that mindset and really start to see the gift that the people in those rooms saw in you?
Yes. I mean, Lindsay was a huge part in encouraging and making sure that I knew that I belonged in the rooms that I was in. And so it just took those people encouraging me and like, believing them. But one of the huge markers for me was being in a songwriting session with all girls. Like, there would be a top liner who's coming to help write lyric and melody. You have the artist who, we're writing for, and then me as the producer. And so many times I would hear from either the artist or the top liner, oh my goodness, I've never been in a session with all girls. Like, this is incredible. Like, I've never been in a room with a female producer. And they all just thought it was so amazing. And it actually gave a more safe atmosphere for the artist to fully express themselves rather than trying to maybe put on what they think people want to hear. So like being with, all females in the room and getting to encourage the artist and then being like, I feel like I can fully be myself. I feel like you get better songs that way because they're able to like fully just be them and more, express themselves instead of trying to make a song they think people want to hear, or being able to really express like their opinions and their thoughts rather than being with a bunch of, older guys who've just been in the industry for 20 years. And no, there's no shade on them at all. They're amazing. And I'm friends with a lot of them, but it just makes a different dynamic when you've got all girls in a room. And I think just hearing that all the time and being encouraged by those artists and by those top liners that to have me in the room gave me a lot more confidence. And also like, I felt honored and like, I'm like, yes, I want to be able to be in these rooms. And if I'm confident in my gifting and that I belong in the room, then I can help bring the best out of the artist and the other songwriter in the room. And that's what I want. So, because when I'm songwriting for other people, I'm a servant to the artist. So it's important that I feel confident that God has, whenever he's sending me out into rooms, it's like, it's because God sent me there and there's a reason that I'm there, and I just have to believe that.
I love that visual of like God has sent me out into these rooms to be a servant to whoever is in those rooms and needs your gift in that moment. I feel like if we as artists saw ourselves more in that way, we would have an encouragement for anything that God has given us and is putting within us, because we know that it's for a reason and it's for people in that room.
Yeah.
And I think as a producer, especially because producers are such key parts of any music, any single, any album, like their handprint is on everything. So having a producer that comes in and is actually already of the mindset of I'm here to serve you, I'm here to encourage you, empowers the artist,
Yeah.
gives them their best, gives them the tools to do their best, wants them to sound their best on that track and all that stuff. So I really love that phrase that you just said. And even just continuing on you as a producer, we will go on to you as an artist. It's just we've not had a female producer on the podcast. We've not had many. So we have to ask all the producers questions. But How are some of your influences? I know in your bio you talk about like producer influences like Coldplay and other people like that. How have their production styles come out in your production style?
Yeah, I love textures and on like keys and synth and different vocal stuff. And so I feel like my bread and butter is in creating atmospheric stuff. And that definitely comes out from like my Coldplay, influence and inspiration from them. But also I love stacking vocals and having those. And so and then I think when it comes to just like sometimes like the vibe and things like that, it's a mix between Japanese house and then like a little bit of John Bellion, just kind of like the vibey what do you call it, like rhythmic stuff. Yeah, and so I think definitely between like the vocals and textures and stuff, those are the things that I feel like I've drawn out the most from my inspirations. And it's also just kind of cool because here's the thing is like you have to be able to, and I've learned this over the time, becoming more confident in my gifting, is it's good to have inspiration, but I want to have time where I'm creating, where I'm not trying to sound like anybody else, and I'm experimenting on my DAW, on my program. I work primarily in Logic Pro, and so because I started in GarageBand, so naturally. And so it's really important for me to just kind of explore and take time to make something that I'm like, I've never heard this before, but I think this is cool. And somebody told me this once before, and I was really discouraged about, I'd sent my song off to some person in LA and thought it was really good, and they tore it to shreds. And I was really discouraged. And I talked to a friend, and he was like, Baily, like, good enough in the industry, that bar is set by somebody else's insecurity. And by the time you feel like you've reached it, the bar has already changed again. And he was like, if you think something is cool, that's what makes it cool. And so I've just pretty much run with that for the last probably 6 years with that advice. And I look at Logic as a playground. Sometimes, people, especially girls who want to get started, and they open up a program and they get really intimidated. But when I teach lessons for production, I'm like, I open it and I'm like, this is your playground. Literally open something and just start pressing buttons and see what it does. It doesn't matter what it's supposed to do. Find the sound. And if you think something is cool, then it's cool, And so sometimes I have to go in with that mentality of like, I'm just here to play. And, so I've, with that mentality and being able to sit down, and I invite God into my creative process, because we are connected to God's imagination, which is absolutely limitless. If I was pulling from my own imagination, I'd be limited. But I just invite God in my creative process and just like have fun. And I think that is what has given me a unique sound as a producer. That my personal fingerprint is on songs. When I first started producing for other people, I was trying to sound like other people. And there was a mistake I made one time. I was producing for this artist because she wanted me to produce a song for her single and for her project. And the first time we ran through it, she didn't really like it that much because it sounded like Christian music as like you would know it. And I realized that she wanted my more like pop influence in it and things like that. And I was like, oh no, like she asked me to produce this song because she wanted my personal fingerprint on it. So I had to own that. And so I think I want to be able to like really just hit on that to encourage people. Like, I think it's beautiful to have influences, but I also think it's really important to sit down and create for fun and find the thing that's in you that isn't necessarily like everybody else. And that is actually really awesome.
That is so good. And you're so, so right. It's easy to fall down the rabbit hole of this is only of value because it, affirms everybody else's things they've said is of value.
Yeah.
And I love what you said about us tapping into God's limitless creativity. Literally, He is the creator, capital C, and we are able to create out of that creativity. So I'm so encouraged by that. And as a producer, who are some of your like favorite people that you've produced for, favorite songs or singles you've produced for, because then we'll go into some of the stuff you produce for yourself.
Yes. So, you know, how you and I connected, I'm going to, you know, hype up my girl, Sarah Jers, who is an artist based in New York City. You know, that she's been on this podcast before, but I've now gotten to write and produce 2 singles with her. We put out one, I think last month that it came out, called Shepherd, and the one that released, it just, you know, not even too long ago, that's called The Cup, and probably more to come because I love working with her and she's so talented. And definitely I've done a lot of like worship stuff. I've worked with because I'm really passionate about that as well. And Sarah was actually my first like R&B track. I hadn't ever really produced R&B, and so that was fun for me, of like being not even going like, oh, I don't know if I can do this. I just kind of, we were just in the room and we were having fun. And I think that that's great. We actually weren't intending to like write a song that night. It kind of just happened. We were just in my studio like goofing around. And I think that was good, because I think if it would have happened like, okay, she wants to sit down and like write and produce a song, I would have been like, I don't know, I've never produced R&B before. And I think I would have let my insecurity like kind of take over. But instead we were just playing around and she loved what I was doing and she just kind of like started singing. So when I realized, you know, that I could produce R&B, I was like, that's so cool. I didn't know that I could do that. But because, you know, like I just said yes and I partnered with the Lord and with Sarah on it, like I found out that I could do something I didn't know I could do. And so we were able to like do it again, and it still stretches me, but I'm also able to like, you know, stretch Sarah a little bit out of her comfort zone. I'm going to pull up my playlist of songs that I have. Somehow, Paula, I got an Apple Songwriters playlist,
That's
which is so
amazing.
crazy. Yeah, it was like a huge mile marker for me. So I think that there's a couple of songs on here that I got to help produce. So let's see. Oh yeah, so there's a church in Pennsylvania called Kingsway Worship, and I've done a couple of songs for them. And then a church in Cincinnati, Ohio, that I produced a couple of songs for their last EP called Rivers Crossing Worship. So that's been some of my favorite worship stuff that I've done. The Kingsway stuff is so cool. I really got to like go into the keys programming for that. And then I'm working on a couple of projects, you know, right now for some artists that are like worship artists. And yeah, I'm trying to think if there's any else in like in the pop world that I've done, but my brain is drawing a blank right now. But I think just currently Sarah is my most like recent. And, you know, because I was working on my album for 2 years, and, you know, and I was writing with Capital, and so I was doing a lot of demos. So there are songs that I don't know if anybody will ever hear, but I've gotten to write with some of my heroes and produce some stuff. So I did a song for Passion that it was almost so close last year to being cut for the conference, but I did that one with Melody. I've done a song with Christian Stanfill, you know, and produced the demo for that, and some stuff with Jesus Culture, and just some really fun stuff. I actually years ago did a song with Josiah Queen, and when like he was still just like, he had taken off on TikTok at that time, but it was just before he absolutely blew up, and we had so much fun writing. And yeah, I think that was what's fun about Capital, is I just got to write and meet so many people who were kind of just like that record labels were maybe like looking at and just wanted to throw them into a writing room. And so, yeah, I just got to meet and work with a lot of different people that I love, and it was super fun. So
that sounds like such a fun job, like just being able to do what you already would do, which is write and produce, but with different people all the time.
Yeah.
And it also sounds like, yeah, God, you really use that experience to just even further your musicality. So, because this album, which we'll talk about in a bit, it's like the kind of explosion of the years of everything, of faith, of music. And you really speak openly about some themes that are like not really talked about in Christian music or faith-based music.
Yeah.
Talk a lot about mental health. You've shared bravely on your socials, like you've been really vocal, allowed yourself to be like a mouthpiece for these things. Could Could you please tell us a little bit, as much as you're comfortable with, about your personal journey with mental health and what led you to actually use such intimate, let's say, experiences in your songwriting?
Yeah. You know, I've been through a lot through like my childhood and things, which, you know, contributed to like the struggles, but I think, you know, I've just gone through a lot of change and transition very, very quickly since moving to Nashville. And I think I always kind of felt like I wasn't rooted anywhere. And so, you know, that kind of feeds to anxiety when you don't feel rooted, like in community and things like that. But so, you know, I struggled a lot with like fear and anxiety, and then always just kind of on and off struggled with depression, not really understanding my emotions or how to identify them or like, you know, things like that. But it really took a turn almost 2 years ago, you know, when I said, you know, went part-time at my church that I had been at for almost 5 years and finally got to, you know, go on staff there. But before that, I had been really like giving my life to that community, that city. And I felt rooted for the first time in mostly my life, because I've moved every 3 to 4 years my entire life. I've now been in Nashville. In August, it will be 7 years, and which is so wild because this is the longest I've ever lived in one state my whole life. And so I felt really rooted in that community. And when the Lord kind of uprooted me from that to, you know, sign to Capital and to move a little bit closer to Nashville proper, I felt completely like it was really hard because I was getting partly a dream of mine while also feeling completely uprooted and exposed. And yeah, I just went from having that covering in that community to this massive change with a lot of pressure on it, a magnifying glass on me, you know, after working for a long time in a hidden place. You know, I've been writing songs since I was 13 years old, been trying to record them, been uploading to YouTube. So it's like, even though the Capital thing happened really fast, I've spent, you know, 15, 20 years investing into music and songwriting and doing a lot of things in a hidden season, to all of a sudden being under a magnifying glass, which, you know, a lot of people say that they want that, but you don't realize all of the things that come with it. And so I think, you know, I was being obedient to the Lord by leaving my church and signing to Capital and taking a different path, because I have left 2 times left vocational ministry for the music industry, which, you know, I'm thinking one is holier than the other, right? You think, well, being at church, like that must be the more holy thing, but the Lord put me in the music industry. And I was self-employed for the first time. I went from having, you know, the call center job and then having the church, and I was getting a small advance from the label, and to literally having my small advance from the label, and then everything else was going to come by either producing or something else. And so I didn't know how I was going to pay my bills. So that created so much anxiety. And because of that, I lost my appetite and I wasn't able to eat, and it just got worse and worse. So I lost a lot of weight from not eating enough, which then contributed to losing sleep. And I don't know if you know, Paula, but like sleep and food are very vital to just being a normal, healthy human being. And so that kind of just snowballed into this deep anxiety, depression of grieving, leaving my church and my friends who now lived over an hour and a half away, and trying to make new friends, being in the industry, trying to figure out how I'm going to pay my bills. And then some stuff happened in my family, and I'm the oldest of 4 siblings. So it just felt really hard being away from my family, feeling helpless, carrying a lot on my shoulders. And it got to the point after months and months of feeling this way and being in so much pain that I wanted to give up. And I became not safe because I didn't value my life. I just wanted to be with the Lord. I didn't want to be in pain anymore. And that's like really difficult as a follower of Jesus, because I love Jesus so much and I know that he has a plan and a purpose for my life. But at the time, my head was so cloudy and I wasn't thinking straight. I was emotionally all over the place and so broken, and I just wasn't able to think clearly. And so it got to the point where my close friends were able to see it. They were with me in my most vulnerable, broken state. And, Sarah was one of those people, and her and, our friend Logan, they were just really there for me in a really amazing way. And Sarah understands, like, she's had her own mental health journey that she's shared about publicly. And but when it got to the point where people who were close to me knew that I needed help, they were able to help me get that. I wanted help, but I like professional help, but I didn't think that I could afford it. And so my friends who knew about resources that I didn't want those people to know. But when they found out, it was actually a God thing, because they knew about resources that I didn't. And so I knew that I needed some kind of, like, I was already in therapy biweekly. I was already on medication, but what I was doing, it wasn't working. So it was like, okay, we need to do something else to be able to get to a healthy spot. And I ended up doing an 8-week outpatient program where I would go a couple of days a week to this treatment program. I would do group therapy, one-on-one therapy. I had a nutritionist to help get my appetite and diet back on track. And I, saw a psychiatrist, like all this. It was a team of people that was going to help me get my mental health state back to a place where I could manage everything that was happening. And because of the people and because of the kindness of the Lord, wondering, Lord, is it really that bad that I have to do this? Like, should I really do this? I got the finances to be able to go within a week of finding out, of being like, okay, I chose the place that I want to do this, and like $10,000 within 7 days to be able to do this program. And one through a program called Music Cares, which was created in 2020 by the Academy to help people in the music industry pay for either addiction services or recovery or mental health services. And then I got a scholarship from the program that I chose to go to as well. And so because of that, I got to go to treatment for free. And that's something that I'm really passionate about talking about, because although I think it's important that we share openly, with what the Lord wants us to share about our mental health journeys, and it is important to talk about it in the faith space, I want to not like only talk about depression and anxiety or suicidal ideation or anything. I really want to focus on the recovery part and the getting help, because as believers, like, I don't want people of the world to look at us and be like, well, what makes it different? What makes you different than me? Is like, if we're both struggling with depression, is one, Jesus walks with me in it. It doesn't automatically make everything better, but he provides a way for me to walk in the victory that he paid for on the cross. And even though sometimes it looks different per person, there is still victory. And that's just the truth. And it looks different sometimes than what we think. But I'm not just going to sit here and only talk about, this disparity of it. I'm going to be like, no, like, recovery is important. Like, being healthy is important. Being healed is important. And Jesus wants to provide that. And sometimes it looks like, I'm just going to say it's a mixture of things. I think it can be a mixture of things. For me, it was church and community and prayer. And it was also medication and therapy and moving my body, drinking more water, is this all the things. And I think we think that physical things aren't spiritual, but they go hand in hand. And so, mind, body, spirit. So yes, I am very passionate about sharing, and just want people to know that, yeah, you can follow Jesus and still struggle. Actually, that's what the Bible is full of. I don't know if we know that, but it is full of people who loved God and also struggled. And, the Psalms are full of that. And we see King David struggle with that, but also it's like this and, like, struggling and God, and struggling, but I'm going to praise, and struggling, but I'm going to worship. And so I don't want to go too much off on a tangent, but I just want to create a place for Christians to be vulnerable and transparent, but also, there's no shame in struggling, but also, if I need to get help, I should get help. And God wants that for me. And it doesn't make me less of a Christian. It doesn't make me less close with God. It doesn't mean that I don't have as much faith. It just means that I'm human. And if I want everything that God has for me, then sometimes that looks like, I need to go to therapy, or I need to tell my friends that I'm struggling, and, things like that. So
I love everything you said. Like, this was just a personification of what I said earlier about that hand in hand vulnerability and joyful. It's the
Yeah.
honesty of what we're experiencing. Like, faith is not, just blind to the situation. It's, hey,
Yeah.
I see it, but I also believe that I will overcome. And I love the practicality of what you were saying. And thank you for mentioning actual like programs for people in music, because that's another thing as well. This is a very niche experience. This industry is very niche sometimes, and very, very doesn't seem real. It doesn't seem normal compared to like the corporate world or these other spaces. And so it is important for people to know that there are resources out there. You might have to do some digging. You might have to jump through a lot of hoops, because unfortunately, it's not made easy for people.
Yeah.
But I love that you talked about just that, like, people having people around you and them encouraging you and walking you through that journey.
Yeah.
And like I said, like, your music is full of this story of this vulnerability plus joyful triumphant victory. And you very recently released your debut album,
Yeah.
All the Time. And it's like all the time, capital letters. It's like all the time.
Yes, exactly.
Love it. First of all, amazing. Second of all, it's kind of crazy this is your debut album, because you've got so many EPs and singles out over the years, since, according to Spotify, since 2017.
Yep.
But this is the first album. How
Yeah.
does it feel?
I know. I always thought that I would have released an album way sooner than I did. And I don't know actually why, because I write so many songs, and so, but I just think it was the timing of it. And it started with the Only Forward EP. I thought that was gonna maybe be an album, but just with the timing of the songs and like my journey and where I was, it ended up, just being Only Forward. I think that was the beginning of me sharing about mental health in my music. And then it wasn't even that long after the Only Forward EP came out that I started writing for what now became the All the Time album. And it feels incredible. There's been such an amazing response to these songs, and people thanking me for my vulnerability, and and people recognizing that I did produce the bulk of it, which is so special to me. And yeah, I got a DM recently from a girl that came to a small show of mine. I think that there were maybe like 15 people at this show, and so it was really small. And sometimes that can be like kind of discouraging, whatever. But there was like 6 people there that I didn't know, including this one girl, and she ended up DMing me a couple weeks later and was like, Baily, I just want to let you know that your music resonated with me so much. I recently lost a friend to suicide, and that show started a healing journey for me, gave me permission to grieve. And I got to make one of your favorite songs of mine permanent in my history. And she got Leave with Oil tattooed on her arm. I was like, wait, what? Like, that was not on my bingo card, as somebody getting my lyric tattooed on them. And so it's just things like that just make my heart so happy, of like, oh my gosh, like this music is making an impact. And that's always what you want.
Yeah, you can see the numbers of the streams going up, and you can see like the retweets and the likes and stuff. But it's actually when you have these stories come in person that you're like, oh, that number equates a person. Like,
yes,
I love that you even mentioned and was quite vulnerable about having a small show. Sometimes we're like, I get this with SheHH and with the podcast. I'm like, oh, only 100 people watch that episode, and I'm like, wait, 100 people in one room, it's huge.
Yes, when you think about them in a room like that, you're like, oh, holy cow, like that would be a lot of us in a room.
Like, wow, thank you, God. Like,
yeah.
I reached that many people, and that many people went on to go and reach other people and told them about what they heard and what they watched. Yeah, God is good. And so I love that person thought that they were just telling you something, but didn't know that they were sharing an impact with you about how you made an impact in her life.
Yeah.
And so let's jump into the album.
Yeah.
I wanted to start with The Way I Do. This song is a chant. I love it. I really, really enjoyed listening back to it. Please tell us about writing and creating this song.
Yes, that's probably one of my favorite songs that I've ever written. And it is because like the lyrics are so deep, but it's really, like you said, it's a chant. It's like a declaration song. It's like fun to sing. It's also really high. I don't know why I did that, but see, it's so high. But yeah, I wrote this song with my friend Carter Froge, who's incredible. And we just got to have a really vulnerable conversation the day that we wrote it of like, we've just been through a lot of things. And, you know, sometimes I've been in spaces where when people go through hard things, they blame God, which I think is sort of a natural human response. When you want somebody to blame when things don't make sense or they're so difficult, so painful, and you just don't really know what to do. But I also realized, like, even though I've been through a lot of hard things in my life, I'm like, it's in those moments where I got to experience God or meet a characteristic of God that I wouldn't have without going through that thing. And I've been telling people, like, I would only know God as healer if I needed healing. I would only know God as deliverer if I needed deliverance from something. And it's like, you know, a lot of people want to see a miracle, but nobody wants to be in a position to need one. And so we wrote this song out of that space of like, you know, a person with little faith might say, well, if God was really good, then this thing wouldn't have happened to me. And a lot of people have said that. And I understand the place that it comes from. It comes from a place of pain and grief. And I totally understand that. But when looking at the Bible, there are people who went through really, really terrible things. And we see that God saw it, but met them in a really special way. And it doesn't mean that it made everything better, but it built faith and it spread the gospel and it brought glory to Jesus. And he also worked restoration in ways that we never would have thought. And that's kind of what I've experienced in my life. And that's what the way I do is. And, you know, that first verse says, a shallow faith said you would protect me from anything bad that would hurt me, that I'd never have pain or suffering, that it would be easy. I'd never need healing, but just is not how, you know, life is. And then in the chorus saying, I wouldn't take back all of the hard times, all of the breakdowns, all the long nights, if it means that I wouldn't know you the way that I do, which is a very dangerous lyric to sing when you really think about it. And you're like, dang, I have had a lot of breakdowns. Do I really mean that I would rather have those breakdowns and know God, or not have those breakdowns? And I'm so thankful for the way that I know God from times of suffering, because it just made me love him all the more and made me realize how loved I actually am. Him meeting me in those times. So that's what the way I do is about. And yeah, one of my favorites.
A very good song. I really like that one. And another one that I loved was Sound Mind. It reminded me of 2 Timothy 1:7. That was probably intentional, but for everybody watching and listening, that says in the King James Version, for God hath given us the spirit. For God hath not given us the spirit of fear.
That's right.
Has not given us the spirit of fear. It's in King James, so it's tripping me up. But of power and of love and of sound mind. It was only that said the sound mind. Some of them said like self-discipline and other things like that, or self-control. Please tell us about writing Sound Mind.
Yes. I got to write that actually. So that song is like 3 years old, which is wild. It kind of just sat there for a minute until I was putting the album together and I realized, I was like, oh, this song perfectly fits in this project. I wrote it with my friend Ben Tan, who is incredible and, you know, was a part of Hillsong Young and Free for the longest time. He's from Australia and he's now here in Nashville. And we got to write it and produce it together. And we were just having fun. And I was being honest with him of being like, my head is all over the place a lot of times. And trying to make decisions and hear God, that was really close to the time that I signed with Capital, if not. And I was so afraid of making a wrong decision, being like, I just want to please God. I just want to please God. And I don't want to make the wrong choice. It's just causing a lot of anxiety. And I was like, that's actually not of the Lord. And so that's why we wrote Sound Mind, of just being like, this is what I need. It's a really simple prayer. Like, I just need a sound mind. And it's pretty that simple, pretty much.
Really beautiful song. And I love I love the 1st and 2 Timothy, like they're 2 of my favorite books. And whenever I see any song, which doesn't happen often, it's written in books, I try and listen. But let's go into the title song, All the Time, capital letters.
Yes.
I'm gonna read some lyrics out. It's more than just a feeling. it's more than just a phrase. I've seen it all my life. I've seen it all my life. God is good all the time. I love that because I'm a church kid as well.
Yes.
I saying God is good all the time, and all the time God is good.
Mm-hmm.
So when I saw that, I was like, she gets it.
Yes.
Please tell us a little bit about that song.
Yeah, it's really special for me because during my year and a half of, going to treatment and all of that and like pursuing recovery, we wrote this song when I really started to feel better. I was kind of seeing that light at the end of the tunnel, so to speak. Like I wasn't all the way out, but I was like, I'm feeling lighter. I'm feeling like I'm making some progress. And I was just thinking, man, God is so good. And, we hear that phrase all the time, no pun intended. And, it's just something that you just hear in church, but sometimes it just kind of like, it's just like, oh yeah, but you don't really like feel it. It's just like, you're like, oh yeah, God is good. But it hit me different that day. I was getting ready for something and I was like, that's more than just a phrase. Like it's actually true. And so in my original idea in my voice memo, I literally said, I wanted to say it's more than just a phrase. And that's, how we ended up coming on. I got to write with one of my favorite songwriters ever. Her name's Natalie Lane, and she's an incredible artist, but she was kind enough to help me write the song for my project. And then I produced it with my friend Dan Niddle. And what's crazy about that is we wrote it that day at Capital, and then Natalie left, but Dan and I decided to stay and just produce the song out. So we started that right. I think we did a double that day. So I had a write in the morning with a passion artist, and then Natalie came and we wrote for me. So I think that write started around 2, and we finished, I think, around 4. She left and Dan and I stayed, and we finished the song pretty much at 10 p.m. that night. So we just stayed in the studio, and that in the bridge when it's like, God is good, like the big gangs, that's literally just me and Dan layering, going different spots in the studio and like yelling it. And we just stacked like a ton of them. So, and so that's just really awesome. Was the bulk of that song came that day. It was so fun to write. And I'm really proud of it. It sounds massive. It's so fun to do live because, I get to really engage with people in the room. So, and I was like, it just had to be the title track. It sounds massive and it's so anthemic. I just think it's a feel-good track. So.
Yeah, definitely a feel-good track. And it does make sense that it was also the name of the album because it very much has everything in its entirety in this one phrase. God is good all the time, all the time.
Yeah.
I did want to ask about one more song, and this is one I believe was also previously a single, Lifter of My Head.
Yes.
So this song is a nod to Psalm 3:3. But you, Lord, are a shield around me, my glory, and the one who lifts my head.
Yes.
Love that verse as well. Love it.
Yes.
Please tell us about this song.
Yeah, I love that scripture because I really don't know if there's anywhere else in the Bible that talks about God being the lifter of our head. I think there's some that are like kind of similar. One of those, I think, being in Isaiah where it says, instead of heaviness, I get a garment of praise. But this one it's like so, you can just picture it. You can picture somebody's head being down and God, bringing your head up, which also, is kind of like Chin Up, which is also on the album. And I got to write that with one of my production heroes, Jacob Suter, who is most well known for producing the last 2 Brandon Lake albums. And he's married to a really good friend of mine, Meredith Andrews. And so I had this idea, I had the chorus, and I brought it to Jacob. And it was at a time where this was before we wrote All the Time and everything. It was toward the beginning of being like, I was not well. I was not well. I did not feel joy, but somehow we wrote this song and it ended up being so fun. And there's like, I feel like an oil of joy on the song, which I think is so kind of the Lord to give us this song of, it really made me feel good writing it, even though I did not feel joy. And now, I get to, sing the song and I don't think of how sad I felt. I just think about how the Lord really is the lifter of my head. Just so even though I was sad, I still wrote about who the truth of God is. And so I love this song because I think you can listen to it if you're having a great day, but also if you're kind of having a bad day and you need God to be the lifter of your head, I think you can you can listen to their song. So
I love that visual of like, oh, I'm actually feeling low, and then God literally lifting up your head. I
yes,
think that is such a visual like reminder of God as your father, but also God as someone who cares about how you feel and your mental health. So really encouraged by that song as well.
thank you.
Last thing I'm going to ask about the music. If someone was being introduced to your discography, what's one song? It can be from all the time, but it can be, since 2017, or even maybe your 7-year-old song that you wrote, you can include in there. But
No.
what's one song that you would tell someone to start with to understand you and what you do?
100%, I would say Lean on You. Yes, Lean on You. So I have a song called Lean on You and a song called Good Days, and those both on Apple Music reached 1 million streams in the same week. But I would say Lean on You is my heart, my sound. I'm kind of always going back to Lean on You as a reference because I felt like it was the first song that I released as an artist that just encapsulated everything, my vulnerability, my message, but also my production. And yeah, so that song, without a doubt, 100%. I have so many people and so many great stories of people listening to that song and it, ministering to people. It's reached more people than I ever would have thought. And yeah, I would tell people definitely, if you want to get to know me as an artist and kind of know what my stuff is going to sound like, it would be that one.
I love that. I'll definitely be checking that out. And I know we're right at the end of the interview. I honestly could just keep chatting because I think you're great and you have loads to say and I'm taking mental note. But I'd love for you to maybe share some of the medium and long-term goals and hopes that you have for your music and your career to come.
Yes. Okay, number 1 on my list is coming to the UK.
Hello? Yes, please. Yeah.
I would love to come to the UK and do a show. I've got a lot of friends over there. One of my good friends and buddies, Ryan Hilton, is over there. He's an amazing Christian artist and a couple other people. But yeah, so would love to come to the UK. Yeah, just playing live as much as I can to be able to share the music and have an experience with people where we can have a safe place to be vulnerable, but also encounter God in our circumstances, and getting to share my testimony and just so that I definitely want to keep producing more music. And I had this cool idea that I want to make happen of like producing songs with people and filming the whole process and putting out like a YouTube docuseries of like the process of writing and producing the songs with my friends. But yeah, I actually have a song soon coming out with Leland, which he's a good friend of mine, somebody that I've always loved and looked up to when it comes to music and creativity. So that song, people should keep a lookout for. And yeah, so my goal is just keep putting out music and keep producing and playing live, all of the things,
Oh, I love that. Yeah, I did want to know a bit more about your live performances and being on stage and how much of that has been a part of your journey that you've enjoyed.
Yes, and people can keep up with my shows on my Spotify or my Bands in Town, on my website, bailyhager.com will always have my shows, and Spotify, I think, as well as connected. So if people want to know where I'm going to be at, they can check there.
And find out when you come to the UK as well, because
exactly, yes, speak it.
Yes, that part. Final thing I'll ask you. So we as fans, how can we be praying for you right now in this season?
Yes, I think right now I am continuing to build my team. I think one of the most important things as an artist is we can't do this alone. It's very isolating already. It's very easy to get discouraged. And so putting people around you that believe in what you do and will help you when you feel like you want to quit. And so I'm building my team right now, and I could just use prayer for the right people to come into my corner and who understand my mission and my goals. And because I do really want the right people who, have good character and integrity and love the Lord, but also just believe in me. So that would probably be my number one thing. And also right now for new songs, working on an album for 2 years was a lot and amazing. And I'm kind of in the space now. I'm like, it's actually time to start writing again. And I'm excited, but I want prayer for the songs that are to come for this next season and that we all need to hear and to sing back to the Lord and things like that. So definitely the new songs for the season, would love prayer for that.
Amen, for sure. Yeah, we'll definitely be keeping you in our prayers and hoping to see that new music when the time is right as well, to be released and ready to kind of work and mission in people's lives. So thank you so much, Baily, for being on the podcast. Thank you all for watching and listening, and hope to see you in the next episode of the SheHH Podcast. Bye.
Amazing. Bye, guys.
Hi guys, I hope you enjoyed that episode of the SheHH podcast. If you did, please leave a like rating, comment down below, and share this episode with a friend. Follow us on Instagram and TikTok at SheHH Podcast.